Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be looking at the Life Domain Cleric, which to me is kind of the most iconic of the cleric subdomains, right? When I think about that old school first and second edition cleric, they were mostly a healer and a buffer, but they could wear heavy armor, they could use a shield, and at least at low levels they were pretty good at hand-to-hand combat even. Before fighters and rangers and paladins all started getting extra attack, they could hang with them fairly effectively. And when I think about all the different subdomains of cleric these days, or all the different domains, sorry, I feel like it's the one that most strongly represents that old school D&D type cleric. And I quite like it. It's not necessarily the most exciting subdomain, and I think a lot of people have a tendency to think that it's essentially just a heal bot. But I think there's a lot of ways you can play it, and I think there's a lot more to this subclass than just that. So, just like any of my videos covering a specific subclass or domain, we're not going to bother with the main core cleric abilities. We're just going to go over the subclass ones, what makes it different than the others. We'll look at the domain spell list. Jeez, my daughter's just going crazy upstairs. Sounds like a parade or something. But anyways, we'll look at feats and race choices, and we'll look at some multiclassing options, because as any of my regular viewers know, I love multiclassing, and it's a topic I never get tired of talking about. So let's jump right in. Cleric is one of those rare cases where you get to choose your subclass right at level 1. So right at level 1, you're going to get bonus proficiency and Disciple of Life. Your bonus proficiency is going to be in heavy armor, which is excellent. Doesn't get any better than heavy armor. It's also a good reason to multiclass into cleric, in my opinion. Now, this video is obviously going to be mostly geared towards playing, as a cleric, and even if we do multiclass, almost all of our levels are going to be in cleric, at least for this video purposes. But if I'm looking to keep spell casting progression while picking up heavy armor, then Life Domain is one of my go-tos, right? So, if I just want heavy armor, fighter is probably a better choice, right? One level fighter is going to give me all the weapons. I could start with fighter and have constitution saving throw proficiency. I'm going to bonus action heal. I'm going to get a fighting style. Level 2, I'm going to get action surge. But every level of fighter I take is also going to slow down my spell casting progression. And so if I'm worried about that more, then a Life Domain Cleric becomes a very strong choice. And especially if I'm say a Warlock or somebody, and I'm not looking to have a lot of Cleric levels, then I may want to have some first or second level spell slots that don't auto scale with me, that I can use to cast my low level spells, and then use my packed slots to cast the higher level spells, in which case Life Domain is one of my go-tos. Disciple of Life. When you use a spell to heal somebody, they get an extra 2 hit points plus 1 per spell level. Personally, I think this ability is a little underwhelming. And by a little, I mean a lot underwhelming. But that being said, it is very, very good at low levels, because your heals don't heal for a lot, especially at low levels, but people also don't have a lot of hit points. So getting an extra, let's see a healing word, for example, right? You're going to get the 2 extra hit points plus 1 per spell level, which is 3 bonus hit points. But that healing word might only heal somebody for 5 or 6 hit points, which means it is literally 1.5 times more efficient when cast by a Life Domain Cleric, right at level 1. The problem is that an extra 1 hit point per spell level, and then 2 extra hit points on top of that, just isn't really keeping up with the inflation of characters' hit points over time, right? So as you level up, this ability becomes less and less significant, and just isn't really a big deal. But to be fair, the lowest levels tend to be the ones with the most character deaths, and low level plays what almost every campaign starts with. That's what you're going to deal with the most often, and that's when this ability is at its strongest. So I don't think it's a terrible ability. I just don't think it's great either, and I do wish the scaling was a little better. You also, at level 2, you're going to get your Channel Divinity, Preserve Life. As an action, you present your Holy Symbol and evoke healing energy. You can heal a number of hit points equal to 5 times your cleric level. Choose any creatures within 30 feet of you and divide those hit points among them. This feature can restore a creature to no more than half its hit point maximum when you use this feature, or you cannot use this feature on an undead or a construct. So it's kind of similar to a Paladin's Lay Hands, right? You're going to have this pool of hit points equal to your cleric level times 5, which is quite a few hit points, right? And it's going to take you your action to use them, and you can heal somebody. But unlike Lay Hands, you can heal multiple people at the same time, and there's a range of up to 30 feet. Now, you can only heal them up to half their hit point total, right? And I don't mean, like, if they have 20 hit points, you can't heal them for 10. You can heal them to a maximum of 10. So if they're only missing, if they're missing 12, you're only going to be able to heal them for 2 hit points if you wanted, right? But that all being said, I think this ability is excellent because if you're in an emergency and maybe multiple people go down in one round, this can let you bring them all up with that one action. And especially at level 2, like, you don't have any multiple healing spells at this stage. And things like a healing word, that's going to allow you to bring one guy up, or cure wounds, but it's touch. You might not be within range of touch, and again, it's only going to be one target. This is going to let you bring up multiple people and heal a good amount of hit points overall if lots of people have taken damage. So I think it's very strong. Level 6, you get Blessed Healer, which is basically just for you what your level 1 ability is for everybody else. Whenever you use a spell to heal somebody else, a first level or higher, you get an extra 2 hit points plus 1 per spell level, healed, plus whatever you're healing to them. So they're going to get that 2 plus 1 per spell level bonus, and you're also going to get the 2 plus 1 per spell level bonus. Now, it's not a bad ability, mostly because you could be in melee a lot, right? You are a class with Divine Strike, one of the healing subclasses. One of the cleric subclasses with Divine Strike. So you could be mixing it up in melee a lot. You do have heavy armor. And even if you're not a frontliner, you might be taking a lot of damage. So in this case, you could heal up one of the frontliners while also topping yourself back up again as well. And it just allows you to stretch those heals a little further and get a little more mileage out of them, which is not a bad thing by any means. Again, though, the scaling isn't super great, and that's really my big problem with it. Healing for 5 or 6 by the time you're level 6, it's not really a lot of hit points. At level 8, you get Divine Strike. So just like every other cleric, you're either going to get bonus damage to cantrips, or you're going to get bonus damage to your martial weapon attacks. And you happen to fall into the martial weapon attack category. Now, generally, I prefer the cantrip damage because it allows you to stay back more, cast your cantrips while also maintaining concentration on your key spells. But there's no reason you couldn't be using a missile weapon. You could use a sling or something, or if you have bow proficiency, maybe you made a wood elf, right? Now you've got longbow and short bow as racial proficiencies. You could be using a bow, and now you're going to get that bonus damage on top of that. Nothing wrong with that. You could be up in melee, because like I said, you do have heavy armor. You could be wearing a shield. You're not bad at it, You're just getting a bit of bonus damage on top of that, which is by no means a bad choice. And at level 17, and it goes to 2d8 at level 14, of course. You get the 1d8, and it's radiant, which is nice, because that's one of the less resistant damage types. And, 14 goes to 2d8 instead of 1d8. Level 17, Supreme Healing. This is basically your subclass capstone, and it's excellent in my opinion. Anytime you would normally roll 1 or more die to restore hit points with a spell, you instead use the highest possible number for each die. So, for example, instead of restoring 2d6 hit points to a creature, you would automatically restore 12. Now notice that there's no limit to how many times you can use this per day. Just every time you cast a healing spell, you automatically heal for the maximum amount. Plus, of course, you've got some bonus healing on top of that even. And to me, this ability is excellent. If I compare it to, say, wizard and sorcerers who get bonus damage on some of their spells, usually it's ones count as 2s, or you can re-roll a number of dice equal to your ability modifier, or something along those lines. You're just automatically getting maximum every single die, every single spell. It is excellent. So maybe it's not the sexiest one out there, it's not really changing what you do, but it is amazing at doing what your core ability was, which was healing people. So if we go to the domain spell list, I really think the Life Domain spell list is pretty good. Now, you're not getting to add spells from other schools or from other classes, which does kind of suck. Everything here you would have access to normally. However, there's a lot of spells on here that you were going to have prepared anyways, and now you don't need to have them prepared. They count as always prepared because they're from your domain. And that just lets you dig a lot deeper into the cleric spell list. And I don't know if you're like me or not, but usually there's like a bunch of spells that I think are really good, but I just can't justify taking them because I need, I want Bless, I want Cure Wounds, I want Healing Word, I want like all these other ones that I just kind of need to do my job. And it prevents me from taking these other really cool spells that I really want to use. But with the Life Domain, I have Bless, I have Cure Wounds. They're always counting as being prepared spells. And that lets me dig a little deeper into the Cleric spell list. So if we look at the spells, Cleric level 1, you're going to get Bless and Cure Wounds. Both excellent. Level 3, you're going to get Lesser Restoration and Spiritual Weapon. Level 5, Beacon of Hope, Revivify. Level 7, Death Ward, Guardian of Faith. Level 9, Mass Cure Wounds, and Raise Dead. And honestly, every one of those spells is pretty good. No real complaints on any of them. Especially, I wanted to mention things like Revivify and Raise Dead. I mean, somebody in your party should probably have Revivify. If it's available, someone needs to have it. But that's what sucks about Revivify. You only need it if somebody dies, but if they die, you need it. And there's nothing worse than telling your party, like, oh yeah, I didn't have Revivify on my prepared list, so I can't res you. Like, that sucks. But because of the fact that you almost never have a death, it means that usually Revivify is just this wasted preparation. It's like an insurance policy on your house. Like, you need it, but you don't want to ever need it. But with the Life Domain, not a problem. If you need it, it's there. It's always there. And if you didn't need it, that's fine. You just have something else prepared. And, like I said, same with Raise Dead. Spiritual Weapon is another one of these ones that I'm always going to want to probably take, but now I don't need to worry about it. It's just always there. So I actually think the Life Domain spell list is really, really solid. It's still probably not as good as the Trickery Domain spell list overall, just because Passive Trace and Polymorph are really hard to beat, but it is very, very strong. It's certainly stronger than some of the others, that's for sure. So that covers the main abilities of the class. I wanted to mention races really quickly. I really like Wood Elf in general, especially for clerics. The +2 dex, +1 wisdom is excellent. The bonus proficiencies, excellent. The racial advantages of elf, like your racial immunities, all that kind of stuff, great. Dark vision, excellent. Wood Elf even has a bit of bonus movement, not a bad thing. The problem is that if I'm going with a Life, War, or Tempest Domain, then the dex is kind of going to be wasted probably. And I'm not saying you can't still make a dex-based cleric using Wood Elf who, just either doesn't wear heavy armor or does wear the heavy armor and just still uses dex. I'm just saying though that in general, if I'm one of the reasons I'm playing heavy armor is probably because I'm not planning on going with dex. In which case, Wood Elf just isn't as strong as some of the other options. And again, that's not to rip on Wood Elf. Like I just said, it's one of my favorite racial choices usually if I'm going to be playing, a cleric, right? And same thing with halfling, right? Like, I'm probably not going to be wearing or playing a halfling if I'm wearing heavy armor, and that's unfortunate because they've got some good choices there too. But you could play a strength-based race like an orc or a half-orc, or Goliath or Dragonborn. But again, then you're not getting the wisdom bonus. So I don't think they're strong either. They're good if you roll for stats because maybe you just have a high wisdom anyway and you don't need the wisdom bonus, right? But if I'm looking to really take advantage of the wisdom bonus and have some strength or con, that really limits my choices down to only a couple. Fortunately though, they're both excellent choices. The first one is the Hill Dwarf. You're going to get a bonus to con, bonus to wisdom. That's pretty much perfect stats. You're going to get some racial bonuses. Dwarves are kind of tough. You get like resistance to poison, all that kind of stuff going for you. You do have a movement penalty, which is a little unfortunate. But overall, Hill Dwarf is a great choice. And getting an extra 1 hit point per level doesn't hurt none either, especially if you're going to be up in the hand-to-hand combat a lot. It helps to overcompensate for the fact that, you know, D8's not terrible, but it's not great either, right? You're on the lower half of center, right? The other one, of course, is the Variant Human. And I feel like Variant Human is always a great choice if you want to take it. But it's especially good on Cleric because there's certain feats I'm probably going to want to have on a Cleric, especially if I'm a melee Cleric. And, you know, I also want to have my Wisdom maxed as fast as possible. So just starting with those feats, or one of those feats, is a real difference maker. So obviously, you can probably guess which feats I'm talking about. We're talking about Resilient Con or Warcaster. Now, if I have an odd number con, I'm going to take Resilient Con as my feat. And that's even if I'm not Variant Human, right? Like, let's say I went with Hill Dwarf, I have like 15 con or something, just the way it worked out. Then taking Resilient Con is going to move it up to 16, and it's going to give me proficiency on con saves, which is going to give me proficiency on concentration saves as well. If I don't, though, if I have like an even number con, I'm probably just going to go with Warcaster. Because of the fact that you can have your holy symbol on your shield, it's not as vital as it is in some other cases, right? But still, if you've got a shield and a weapon and you're trying to cast spells, things can get a little wonky, right? There's some really weird rules about the kind of stuff with stowing weapons and drawing weapons and, you know, everything else. And Warcaster just means you don't have to worry about that stuff. So if your DM's a little picky, Warcaster becomes a really good choice. Of course, the main reason we want Warcaster is advantage on our concentration saving throws, which is just always good. And honestly, there's nothing stopping you from taking both those feats. I mean, if I'm going to be in melee a lot, but I want to be mostly casting spells a lot, I might take them both. I've done it before on other characters. So going beyond those two feats, though, I feel like Lucky is always a great choice. It's so versatile. 3 times per day I can reroll, or even force the DM to reroll like an attack roll against me. That's very handy. But, you know, if I fail a concentration saving throw, I could use Lucky to reroll it. Now, granted, I'd probably just rather have Warcaster, right? Maybe I wouldn't fail it to begin with. But Lucky's a lot more versatile. It's not going to be just concentration saving throws. So I feel like Lucky's pretty good. I like Observant. There's not a lot of feats that give you a +1 to your wisdom, but Observant's one of them. And it's going to give you the +1 wisdom. It's going to increase your passive perception. It's a really strong feat choice as well. Especially if you have an odd number of wisdom. Maybe you had 17 wisdom or something like that, right? Going to move you up to an 18, give you the +4 bonus, and now you're going to have bonus to your passive perception as well. I like Heavy Armor Master, especially if I'm going Variant Human. Heavy Armor Master is one that just excels at low level, but it doesn't scale particularly well. And it also doesn't work against magical attacks. So as you face more and more things that have magical weapon attacks or count as magical weapons, then it becomes less useful. But a lot of times at low level, you're getting hit by like goblins and kobolds and stuff for like 5 or 6 damage. So reducing that by 3, a lot of times it's like a 50% damage reduction or even higher. And like I said earlier in this video, the low levels tend to be the most dangerous. So, I mean, that helps a lot on reducing the amount of damage you're taking. And it means that instead of having to heal yourself all the time, you can be concentrating on healing your allies. It also makes those concentration saving throws easier. Like if you're trying to maintain concentration on Bless, and somebody hits you for 6 damage, but it gets reduced by your Heavy Armor Mastery, and now it's only 3, you know, easier save to make, right? Well, in that case, the numbers will work out the same, but you know what I'm saying. Another good choice, if you wanted to really specialize more on the melee damage, would be to take something like, say, Magical Initiate. Because then you could pick up, like, say, a Booming Blade from, like, Warlock, Sorcerer, or Wizard, and then also get yourself, like, a first-level Wizard, Sorcerer, or Warlock spell that you could use once per day, right? So you could pick up something like a Hex. You could take a Find Familiar or a Shield, something along those lines, right? And it's not a bad way to go. The only thing to remember is, I mean, you could take Green Flame Blade as well, but Liliana is just going crazy tonight. Anyways, the thing to remember why I'm not going to favor Green Flame Blade as much is because if you take Magic Initiate, it's going to scale off that class's attribute bonus, not off your wisdom. So if you went with, say, Charisma, let's say you went with Sorcerer, for example, then it's going to scale your Sorcerer's charisma mod, not with your cleric's wisdom mod. But booming blade doesn't have that problem. So if you want to just be like, hey, I'm going to be casting a lot of spells, but when I do hit somebody, I'm going to use a booming blade and just hit even harder. And I'm going to combine that with my divine strike. So I'm doing an extra d8, maybe even 2d8, plus the booming blade damage on top of that. It means that you will hit pretty hard. And I think that's a decent use for a feat. As for multiclassing, there's some excellent choices here. Even though there's some redundancy with fighter, I still like fighter a lot. Fighter is going to give you, especially if you started fighter, you're going to get proficiency on constitution saving throws, and thus concentration saving throws. So that could actually save you a feat right there, right? It's going to give you a bonus action self-only heal, but that's not bad, right? It's not a spell, which means you could heal somebody with, like, say, a cure wounds, and then bonus action heal yourself all at the same time, or all in the same turn, sorry. It's going to give you a fighting style, so you can take something like defensive or whatever else you wanted, right? And if you took 2 levels, you're going to get action surge. But another possibility is to take 3 levels, and then maybe take something like Eldritch Knight. And then instead of taking the Magic Initiate feat, you take Booming Blade from Eldritch Knight. And then you could get something like a Find Familiar, you could take like a shield spell, for example. And that's not a bad way to go. And if you only want to have 1 attack around still, I mean, you could go to level 5 and get a 2nd attack, but that's going to cost you 9th level spells. So I don't know that it's really worth it. But if you're taking 3 levels, you can take Booming Blade, you're attacking with that, you've got Action Surge once per short rest, never anything wrong with that. You've got your fighting style, you've got your bonus action heal, you've got proficiency on constitution saving throws if you started fighter. And I feel like that's a pretty solid way to go. You'll still be able to get 9th level spells if your campaign goes all the way to 20. It's pretty strong. Another option is to take Ranger instead of Fighter. And I like this option better if you're planning on using ranged weapons. So you could be using like a bow, and then you don't need the concentration saving throws quite as much because you're not getting hit as often. And either like Hunter or Gloomstalker is going to give you some extra damage, like a Colossus Slayer, for example, type of thing, right? Or that first attack in that first round on your Gloomstalker, you're going to get that extra attack. And it can allow you to like get a bit more damage in that way while also playing at range. It'll give you some nice spells, like 3 levels of Ranger, it'll still give you like a Hunter's Mark. But if you're planning on going to level 5 and getting extra attack, I actually kind of prefer Ranger over Fighter in this case. Because I'm going to get my 2nd level Ranger spells, which could give me something like a Pass Without Trace, and especially if I'm wearing plate mail, you know, I might need Pass Without Trace to help to offset my disadvantage on my stealth rolls, you know? And I feel like it's pretty good in that case. It's using a wisdom mod, so there's no conflict there. And yeah, it means that if you take 5 levels of Ranger, obviously you're going to lose out on your 9th level spell. So that's something you might want to have to, you know, you might want to weigh that, decide if it's worth it or not. But your campaign might not go all the way to 20 anyways, in which case losing out on 9th level spells is not even an issue, right? And also, even if it does, I'm not saying that clerics don't have some good 9th level spells options. They do, of course. But like if I was playing a wizard, that's a hard choice because 9th level spells on wizard are absolutely a game changer, right? Like Wish alone, just being able to duplicate any spell 8th or lower level from any class is ridiculous, right? So I mean that's a lot to give up. But cleric, the 9th level spells are good, but there's nothing like that outstanding compared to, like, say, the wizard spell list. So I feel like it's a smaller sacrifice. It's still a sacrifice, it's just a smaller one. And, you know, it might be worth it if you want to have 2 attacks around, right? Another option would be to take Wizard, Warlock, or Sorcerer. Like I said, you could pick up something like a Booming Blade from one of those. But you can also get some useful spells like, you know, Find Familiar, or Shield, or whatever else. Hex, you know, for example. Armor of Agathis could be a really strong choice. And then you just cast it with your Cleric spells as you level up, you know. So I feel like there's some really good choices there as well. And because those are also casting classes, it's not going to hurt your spell casting progression as much as, say, taking a bunch of fighter levels or even Ranger, where it's only a half caster, you know. So I feel like those are all pretty good options as well. You could also go Druid. I don't want to say too much about that because that's going to be my next video probably. It's going to be a Life Domain Cleric Druid multiclass. And, I was actually going to do that one this week, but the more I thought about it, I was like, kind of should probably cover the basic of the cleric first, so why not? So that's where we are tonight. Overall, though, I feel like Life Domain is one of the better cleric subdomains or subclasses, and I feel like it has a lot to offer. I feel like even though it seems like it's the most forced into this like heal bot type niche, because of the fact that all your main healing spells are domain spells, it actually lets you kind of diversify a lot more, where you don't have to take a bunch of those spells and it frees you up for other things, which allows you to just play it in different ways, right? I think the fact that you could be like a hand-to-hand guy or a ranged guy or, a buffing support healing type guy, it just kind of opens up all the various options of the cleric class. And the truth is, clerics are a very, very strong base class. And I feel like this one really lets you play to any of those strengths that the clerics already have. So, anyways, those are my thoughts on the Life Domain. Feel free to like, subscribe, hit, notification bell, etc. But most importantly, as always, leave me your comments in the comment section. That's what I look forward to the most. And I will see you next time in the dungeon.